One of the things that always annoys me in horror books and horror films is if you can telegraph what's coming.
Yeah.
And as I was writing it, I thought, well, people are going to think this is going to happen, so I'll make sure that happens instead. And I think all the way through it, I was very conscious that I didn't want people second guessing what was going on. And if anybody does second guess the 2 or 3 major points, I'll be staggered. I really will. So hopefully every horrible, horrific surprise will be a horrible, horrific surprise when it actually hits the readers, because there's nothing worse than being able to figure out what's going to happen during the course of a book or film. So hopefully everybody will be in the dark until it actually hits. It definitely becomes more difficult the more stuff you've written, but also people are so used to, there's a certain vocabulary of horror that people are used to reading or seeing, and it's very, very difficult to find a different angle on that. It's something I always keep trying to do. I sometimes think I should perhaps just do the same old stuff over and over again, but I can't do that. I like to do something different in every book. And it is difficult. It does become more difficult, especially when you've written, 36 books or whatever, like I have. I forget exactly how many it is, but it does become difficult to find a different angle and to keep readers guessing, which is what I try to do. I just think it's a really bad idea to try and jump on bandwagons, because in publishing, the gap between actually presenting a finished novel and publication is so huge. If you're trying to jump on a bandwagon, chances are it's moved by the time the book comes out. So, I've never been one to sort of look at current trends and think, oh, I'm going to do something like that. I don't want to do something like that. I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. I'd rather do something totally different. So, but it is, it's almost impossible finding something completely original. Everything has been done, but you can usually find a different angle to come at it from, and that's always what I've tried to do, and hopefully what I've done in Chase. I wrote a script and a book a few years ago called Epitaph. I don't remember what it was, and I think within about 2 weeks of Epitaph being finished, Buried came out, the film with Ryan Reynolds, and it's like, oh shit, I've just done this. But you feel like putting a disclaimer at the front of the book saying, actually, I did this before Buried came out. So it's very annoying, and I did that with FX as well years ago. I wrote a novel called Victims, which was about a special effects man who used real bodies in his film scenes, and about 2 weeks after I finished it, FX came out, which is all about a special effects man who used FX to, solve crimes and stuff like that. So yeah, it is very annoying, because people 9 times out of 10 will turn around and say, oh, he's nicked that idea, and it's like, no, he nicked my idea. But you can't do anything about it. You just have to hope that people either don't notice or don't mind, really. I just hate being thought of like I'm doing the same as everybody else. I really don't like that. I just want to do my own thing. I don't want people to think I'm, jumping on bandwagons. I really don't want to do that. I think, obviously, with it being a horror book, you've got to have violence in it. I mean, it's just how explicitly you describe that violence. And I think possibly in Monolith, which is the book that I did before this, there wasn't as much violence, not in the way that it used to be described years ago, but I think in Chase I've certainly gone back to the way I used to describe violence and horrific scenes. It does go on for a long time. I say there's 2 or 3 scenes in it which are as nasty as anything I've ever written, but I think my readers particularly expect that from me, and hopefully this time they certainly won't be disappointed, because it is really quite disgusting in places. No, I mean, I think it occasionally works the other way around, that you think, oh, I'm perhaps going to rein back on the violence a bit, but otherwise, no, this time, when I was writing Chase, I just thought, right, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to see what happens, and if I look at it and reread it and then think, oh, it's gone a bit too far, I can cut it. But not at any time did I think that. I just thought, nah, sod it, they want it like this, they can have it like this. So, but it shows if it's fake. If it's fake, if you're forcing it, it shows in the writing. But I'm lucky. I've just been blessed with a sick mind, and I've always found it very easy to describe people's pain and suffering in horrendous physical detail, and I've certainly done that in Chase in places. I think you can't help self-censoring sometimes, and I mean, there's been occasions in the past where I've thought about scenes that I was going to write and just thought, no, it'd just be too much. So, you know, despite what people think, I don't just write exactly what I imagine and, you know, spew it out onto the page. I do actually look and think, not sure if that's working or not, it's gone too far. Yeah, there has to be a certain amount, I think there has to be a certain amount of self-censorship in everything you do, and obviously horror probably even more so. I think there's fewer boundaries in horror than there are in any other genre probably, and you can get away with stuff. I wasn't saying you can get away with murder, but that would have been terrible. But you can get away with stuff in that genre that you wouldn't be able to get away with possibly in a thriller. I think that line has been blurred over the years, and you can get away with most things in most genres, but horror just gives you that option of just pushing a little bit harder if you want to, which I do, and I think readers want as well, because it's almost like there's no limits with horror. You just, you know, it's like you can if you want to go as far as you like, and I've certainly always gone as far as I wanted to. So yeah, I think people do expect certain things, and if they don't get them, they get annoyed, and I can fully understand that. Well, I think certainly the bad guy doesn't necessarily have to. Well, there doesn't even have to be a bad guy and a good guy. I think that's probably been like that all the time, you know, throughout history in horror. That in other genres it has to be quite carefully delineated who's good and who's bad. But, you know, like you say, if you look at the classic icons of horror, I mean, Freddy Krueger's a villain, but everybody loves him. Jason's a villain in Friday the 13th, but people seem to like him better than they do the, you know, idiotic teens that he kills off. So, as I say, you don't have the restraints in horror that you do in another genre. You don't necessarily have to get people to identify with the, you know, white hat wearing hero. You can have a guy, you know, who's a complete bastard. If you can make him acceptable to your readers, then you can get away with it. I think whatever you write, it doesn't matter again which genre you work in. Excuse me, you are writing about stuff that is personal to you, and obviously in horror, yes, I do tend to write. There's a lot of damage to people's eyes in my books, and I think that's because I've always had a terror of going blind, so it probably crops up in that. But yeah, I mean, there's certain bodily parts always elicit more reaction from a reader when something horrible is done to them. So I think, yeah, I do tend to concentrate on that. I mean, my own fears I do have fears of being shut in small spaces, so there tends to be a lot of that, and I think that's reflected in Chase. It's a very claustrophobic, very paranoid book, and I am a little bit paranoid myself. So yeah, anything that you feel very deeply, you just bring it out. You can exorcise it in that book that you write. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you feel that particular fear yourself, then it becomes a lot easier to transmit it to other people, and to make that fear hopefully grow within them. I mean, if I had a fear of, I don't know, cats or something, there'd probably a lot more people in my books who, you know, were terrorised by kittens, but I just tend to kill them off a lot. That's all. But yeah, if there's a particular fear you've got, then it's easier to translate that to readers. But it does become that, and it becomes a bit of a cliche in itself. It's like, here's another book about a writer who's having problems. It's like, oh, come on, make him a doctor or something. Just change it a little bit. But I suppose if Stephen King's writing about writers all the time, he finds it easier to describe their predicament, obviously, because he's a writer, than he does to describe it if they worked at Quick Fit or something. You know, you have to write about what you know, and obviously, with him being a writer, he would know how a writer's mind works better than how a doctor's mind works. It has to be relatable to you.
But you've now written about 35.
Oh, yeah, well, 35 under my own name, and about another 30 under different names as well. So.
And they've all been. They've been cross genre. They've been cross.
Yeah, it's been kids books, thrillers, non-fiction. You know, everything really. Just stuff, westerns, war novels, you know, just stuff that's appealed to me at the time, or that's been commercial, that publishers have asked for, you know, whatever's been there. And I just love storytelling. It doesn't matter which particular genre it's in, but I just love telling stories. I think the research, well, yeah, and there is obviously, even in westerns and war novels and stuff like that, it's got to be right. Everything you write about, the details have got to be correct, particularly with the weapons and things like that. I don't enjoy research, I must admit. I'd rather just be able to sit down and start writing. I don't like having to go through books and the internet and all that, finding out information. I'd just rather get on with it. But obviously research has to be done. It's interesting. I mean, over the years, I've done some very interesting things. I've visited New Scotland Yard's Black Museum for victims. I learned how to read tarot cards for shadows. I learned about dogfighting for relics, you know. So over the years, there's been interesting bits of research, but I just don't particularly enjoy it at the time. Well, I think the fact that the title, which is when people read it, will discover what it actually means. I think it comes back to what I was saying earlier on about people second guessing things and like always keeping them guessing and keeping them wondering what's going on. And it's almost like the title, and I don't wish this to sound pretentious in any way, shape or form, but it's almost like the title is a bit of a twist, is a bit of a conundrum as well. And again, it's very, very difficult. I don't think I've written a book for years that I find so difficult to talk about without giving too much away. There's so many twists and turns in this that it's very, very hard even to discuss the nature of the plot without giving away what are really crucial twists and turns. So I don't want to give too much away, obviously, but even the title in some ways is a bit of a, what's the word? I'm trying to think of a polite word for it. Is a bit of a con. Well, not a con, but I don't know. It's very difficult. The only word I could think of was mindfuck, and I didn't really want to use that. But that's the only word I can think of to describe it. Well, it'd be very nice if everybody could keep the secrets, but I don't think they will. I think possibly once people have read it and start talking about it, once they've overcome their initial shock and horror, they probably will start giving some of the things away. But that's fine. You expect that. If somebody's paid their hard-earned money for a book, you can't expect them to keep quiet about it for the next 15 years, can you? It won't spoil it though. I mean, anybody who knows what the twists are, it's not necessarily going to spoil their enjoyment of it. It's just that it will be a lot more. They would appreciate it a lot more if they could just read straight through from page 1 to page 350 without knowing what's going on. But it won't spoil it.